today's lesson we're considering verbs in English. Verbs are extremely important in English. As a matter of fact, you cannot make a sentence without the use of verbs. Yeah, there is no way you can ever make a complete sentence, a major sentence, without using a verb. So that tells you that these words called verbs, they are extremely crucial and important in making sentences. So what then are verbs and why are they important? By the way, my name is Joseph Laughter and welcome once again to my YouTube channel. Do not forget to like, share and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Now, what are verbs? To start with, verbs are words that show actions. Words that show actions or state of being. Yeah? Verbs are words that show actions, words that show actions or state of being. When we were in primary school, we were told that verbs are action words. Yeah, that is absolutely true. Any word that shows you that an action has happened, an action is happening, or an action will happen is a verb. Also, sometimes a verb may not necessarily show you that someone has committed an action or has performed an action or has done something. It might just be telling you the state in which the person is at the moment. So that's what we say. Verbs are words that show actions or state of being. Do you understand the definition? Yeah? So that's it. So in today's lesson, we will be talking about different types of verbs, or we will be looking at the topic verbs from these different perspectives and the different angles. Yeah? First of all, we'll talk about auxiliary and lexical verbs. We will also talk about singular or plural verbs. We will talk about tense, which is a very wide topic on its own, an aspect. We will talk about stative and dynamic verbs. We'll talk about regular and irregular verbs. We'll talk about transitive and intransitive verbs. We'll talk about active or passive voice, and then we'll talk about action or linking or locative verbs. Now, this video will be a short video, and it will be a video that's summarizing all of these topics. For every of these individual topics, there will be a video teaching each of these individual topics and treating the topic at length and in well detailed format. So make sure you check all of the videos that I would release teaching all of these topics. Yeah, let's go. So first of all, we already said that verbs are action words or words that show actions or states of being. Yeah, that's it. Now, auxiliary / lexical verbs. What is an auxiliary verb? Actually, I will start with what is a lexical verb. So basically, lexical verbs are also called main verbs. Yeah, lexical verbs are called main verbs. And when we say that a verb is a lexical or is a main verb, that means that it is a verb that can stand alone. Yeah? So lexical verbs are also called main verbs. Don't worry, this will be a little bit rough, but that, like I said, it's just a topic that would summarize the whole, is a lesson that will summarize the whole topic. For individual lesson of each of these, you need to check for the videos that I would release. Yeah? Auxiliary verbs. So if lexical verbs are main verbs, that's verbs that can stand alone. Yeah. Auxiliary verbs, on the other hand, are verbs that need, we call them helping verbs. And why do we call them helping verbs? Because they are verbs that cannot usually be used alone. Quickly. When you see an auxiliary verb or a verb that you know is auxiliary used alone, most times the verb has gone through a word formation process that we could call lexicalization. Yeah, that means the auxiliary verb has now been lexicalized. It has not been made to perform the role or the function of a lexical verb. So it doesn't. So at that point, it is no longer functioning as an auxiliary verb, but as a lexical verb. But like I said, when we go fully into these individual topics, you will get to understand that. Yeah. So lexical verbs, main verbs, auxiliary verbs, helping verbs. So what are lexical verbs? Like verbs like eat, yeah, to eat. Verbs like dance, verbs like travel, verbs like sing, verbs like sleep, etc. So all of these verbs, they are lexical verbs. I could use them alone. I could say, I slept all night. I could say, I traveled last week. Yeah? I could say, I eat bread and egg for breakfast. Yeah? So all of these, I could use them in sentences alone without the use of any helping or auxiliary verbs. Auxiliary verbs, on the other hand, are verbs like we said, the helping, and then the verbs like the be verb, yeah? Be verb, I'll just put that here. Be verb, the have verb, the do verb. All of these three are primary auxiliary verbs. Primary, yeah, auxiliary verbs. Well, we also have the shall and should, yeah, will and would, may and might, yeah, can and could, and then must. These ones are called modal verbs, yeah? So auxiliary verbs are actually divided into two major branches. We've got the lexical auxiliaries. We've got the primary auxiliaries, like primary auxiliaries, be verb, have verb, and do verb. I've actually done a video on be verb. You might want to check that. I would also be doing videos on have and do verb. So primary auxiliaries, be, have, and do. Modal auxiliaries, we could have shall and should, present and past, will and would, may and might, can and could, and must. We also have what we call semi-modals. Yeah, that would be something like ought to, be able to, etc. But like I said, when we go fully into this topic, you would get to learn about all of those and you would understand the topic better. Singular / plural verbs. Yeah. Every verb in English, now this time around, I'm mostly talking about action verbs, and I'm actually talking about lexical verbs because mostly lexical verbs are the ones that could give us what we have as action verbs, yeah, except for do verb, yeah, if it is functioning as a lexical verb. Now, so lexical, singular and plural verbs, singular verbs and plural verbs. Now, all verbs in English in their base form, like the verb eat, the verb sleep, the verb dance, the verb travel, yeah, etc. All verbs in their base forms are all plural verbs, yeah? Verbs in the base form are plural verbs. Do you understand that? Yeah? So if you have a verb like eat, sleep, dance, it is automatically in its plural form. Now, this is where verbs are different from nouns. Nouns in their base original forms are singular. Yeah. When I do a topic contrasting both topic, when I do a lesson contrasting both topic, you would get to understand it better. So nouns in the original forms are singular, like boy, girl, eat, woman, man, dog, etc. All of these are singular nouns, but verbs in their original forms are plural. So for you to pluralize a noun, you would need to add an S to it. Yeah. So if I say boys, that is a plural noun. If I say women, that's a plural noun. If I say buses, that's a plural noun. If I say cars, that's a plural noun. If I say men, that's a plural noun. Yeah. But for verbs, the verb in its original form is a plural verb. So all of these, eat, sleep, dance, etc., they're all plural verbs. So when you need to singularize it, that's what gives you the singular version of verbs. So if I add s to this, it becomes a singular noun. As to these, a singular verb rather. As to these, it becomes a singular verb. Dances, singular verb. Travels, singular verb. Yeah. So in summary, nouns minus s, singular, plus s, plural. Verbs minus s, plural, plus s, singular. Do you understand that? Yeah. So now let's go. That's all about singular and plural verbs. By the way, you need to also understand that some verbs, all verbs, when you try to write a verb in its singular form, all of it would always be you adding an s or an es or ies to the verb. For nouns, the way you pluralize nouns differ in so many ways. There are some that are regular, there's some that are irregular, and then the irregular ones are even most crazy ones. Yeah. Tense and aspect. Actually, aspect, the term aspect is more of an advanced topic. Yeah, it's more of an advanced topic because in basic knowledge of teaching of verbs, what we call aspect in a way has been grafted into what tense is or what tenses should be. Yeah. So I'll mostly talk about tense for the sake of this topic or for the sake of this lesson. So when we talk about tense, we refer to the time of an action. It's as simple as that. So tense would mostly discuss time of an action. Is it the present time, which means the present tense? Is it the past time, which means the past tense? Is it the future time, which means future tense? It's as simple as that. So those are the three basic wings of tense or tenses. So tense refer to the time an action was performed. Yeah. So if the action was performed in the present time, would say that the action or the verb is in its present tense. If the action was performed in the past tense, we'll say the action and the verb is in its past tense. And if the action will be performed in the future time, we'll say the verb is in its future tense. Yeah. Now, these tenses, the present tense cannot be further divided into the simple present, yeah, or the present continuous tense, etc. Yeah, or the present perfect tense. The past tense can also be the simple past or the past continuous or the present perfect. Yeah, future. There's lots of ways we could further expand the topic of tenses. So what we call as aspect in the advanced lesson would have been what we now treat as the present perfect tense, the past perfect tense, or do you get it? Yeah. So, or the present continuous tense or the past continuous tense. Because when we talk about aspect, we're referring to is it the progressive aspect, which is you using the form of the be verb plus a verb in its ing form, which in basic level we would have called the present continuous or the past continuous verb. Yeah. Or is it a perfective aspect, which would be you using a have verb plus a verb in its en or the participle form? Yeah, which we would have called the present perfect or the past perfect tense. Yeah. So now let's go to stative / dynamic verbs. So stative verbs, simply put, are verbs that cannot be used to show the continuous tense. Yeah, we cannot use them progressively. I cannot say, yeah, speak on, I am understanding you. No, that is wrong. So stative verbs, we don't use them to show present continuous. So a verb like understand, you cannot say something like, I am understanding you. If you see the word understanding, it's most likely has gone through another word formation process we call nominalization. It has been nominalized. That means it is now functioning as a noun. Do you understand that? Yeah. So stative verbs, verbs like understand, verbs like feel. You cannot say, "Oh, I'm feeling you." Yeah, nah, that would be wrong. Like you could say, "I feel you." You could say, "I understand you." Yeah. Or I am seeing. Those basically stative verbs are verbs like verbs that usually show anything around the senses. Yeah, we don't usually use them to show the continuous tense or what we call the progressive aspect. Dynamic verbs, on the other hand, you could use them anyway. You could say, I am eating, I was eating. I am sleeping, I was sleeping. I am dancing, I was dancing. I am traveling, I was traveling. I will be traveling. I mean, you could use dynamic verbs anyhow. So that means dynamic verbs are verbs that can be used to show the continuous tense, either the present continuous or the past continuous, or what we could also call the progressive aspect. Regular / irregular verbs. Now, this is usually discussed as regards the present and past tense. Yeah, regular verbs, simply put, are verbs that will take ed, that take d-o-ed, to form their past tense. Yeah, so that means that the formation of the past tenses is easily predictable. You know, you either have to add d or ed. Dance. The past tense of dance is danced. Travel. The past tense of travel is traveled. Yeah, that's it. Those two are regular verbs. You either add d or ed. And if it's a verb that ends with the letter y, like study, S-T-U-D-Y, let me write that down, S-T-U-D-Y, then you just change the y to I, and then you add your ed again, so studied. So verbs where you could easily form their past tense or participle forms by adding d or ed are what we call regular verbs. What the ones irregular, from the word irregular, that means you cannot predict how they form their past or past participles, and this is one of the reasons where ESOL learners, yeah, second language learners of English usually have problems, because all of the irregular verbs all have different rules. For instance, the past tense of eat is ate. The past tense of sleep is slept. The past tense of drive is drove. The past tense of ring is run. The past tense of run is run, and the participle form is run again. Like put, for instance, does not even change. Put. It doesn't change at all. So that's the problem with irregular verbs. And so that's what irregular verbs are. They are verbs that have various ways in which they show their past or participle forms. Yeah? So that is regular and irregular verbs. Transitive and intransitive verbs. This is a bit of an advanced knowledge also, but it's something you should know. So transitive verbs are verbs that can take an object. Yeah. I've done a video where I talked about pronouns, subject, and object cases. Yeah. Now, I will do a video that talks about the elements of the clausal structure, like elements that make up the clause, like the subject, the predicate or predicator, let's just say the verb, the subject, the verb, the object, the complement, the adverbial or the adjunct. Yeah, I will do a lesson on that, and then you would understand these better. And then I could also, when I'm teaching like the old term of transitivity or talking about transitive and intransitive verbs as a lesson on its own, you would also understand better. So transitive verbs are verbs that can take object. I ate the food. The food is the object of the sentence. I is the subject. Ate is the verb. Yeah? Or the predicate in advanced grammar. So the verb eat rather, can take an object. But the verb sleep cannot take an object. So the verb sleep is an intransitive verb. I slept. What do you want to say after that? The only thing you can say after that is to talk about maybe adverb, like the time you slept or how you slept. Yeah, I slept like a baby. Like a baby would be an adverbial. Yeah, but you cannot say I slept something. But you can say I ate something. I stole something. I read a book. I teach English. Last week I taught English. I drive a car. I fly a plane. Yeah, you can say that. But the same verb fly that I've just used now, let me also put that here. The verb fly, for the action that birds perform. that would be an intransitive verb. Birds fly. That's it. How they fly, where they fly to is all you can talk about. You cannot say that the verb flies something. Yeah, but fly from the perspective of a pilot flying a plane, that would be transitive. So there are verbs like that too that could function transitively or intransitively depending on context. Like one of my Spanish students would say something like dependiendo situación, which means that it all depends on situation. So transitive verbs, they can take object. Intransitive verbs, they cannot take object. Yeah, they cannot take object. Active / passive voice. Now, so voice itself is a different topic on its own, but in some teaching of grammar or teaching of verbs, yeah, in some advanced level of teaching grammar, we actually could talk about active verbs and passive verbs, or active and passive voice. But the fact that verbs are the ones that help realize this is also why we talk about it under the topic verbs as a whole. So an active verb is a verb whose subject is the performer of the action. Now, normally, in normal sentence or in normal sentences, the subject is usually the one that performs the action. I ate the food. I am the subject. Ate is the verb. The food is the object. But when we switch that around and say the food was eaten by me. Now, in the passive sentence or passive voice, the food has now become the passive subject. Yeah, the whole of grammar is crazy, trust me. However, it's something I can easily explain to you and you'd understand better. Like I said, when I'm teaching the topic voice, you would get to understand that better, or when I'm teaching the passive sentence itself as a topic. Yeah. So now, if I say the food was eaten by me, now, was eaten, the verbal phrase was eaten is now a passive verbal phrase. Because normally, was is a form of a be verb, yeah? And normally in English grammar, the be verb would or should only be used with a verb in its ing form. I am sleeping. I was sleeping. I am driving. I was driving. But the only time we use the be verb plus an en verb is when it is a passive verbal phrase. Do you understand that? Yeah. So active verbs would just be the normal verbs in the normal sentences. But when you use a verbal structure where there is a be verb and the verb that ends that verbal phrase, because we could have 2, 3 verbs actually forming a whole verbal phrase, yeah. But the verb that ends the verbal phrase, if it happens to be the participle form of the verb, the original verb, like the food was eaten, the food will be eaten. The food is being eaten. It doesn't matter how much you stretch that. As long as the verb that ends the verbal phrase is the en verb. And the en verb comes after a be verb. That should normally not be the case. That is a passive verbal phrase. But all of your basic normal way of forming verbs or of using verbs or using verbal phrases will all be active sentences. So I traveled, you traveled, I ate, you ate. They're all active sentences. The active voice. Yeah, that's it. And then action or linking verbs or locative verbs. So I've talked about action verbs. They are like normal actions that they talk about actions. So those are verbs that talk about actions. Now, and like I said verbs are either action words or words that show actions or states of being. Yeah. So the action verbs, yeah, they're any form of verb that expresses an action. Eat, dance, drive, run, sleep, etc. They're all different forms of action. Yeah, of actions. Linking verbs are usually the verbs that show us the state of being. We also call them copular verbs. Copular verbs, but that's just a bit of some advanced just knowledge. But I mean, knowing the name is good. It's just that you don't necessarily need to know all of the names. Yeah. But linking verbs, basically, they're usually verbs that show state of being, and that's because they often link the subject, yeah, to an adjective that is usually a complement. Now, the complement can be a nominal complement or an adjectival complement. That's what that means is that I could say, I am a man. Yeah, the state of me, the current form in which I am, is that I am a man. I could say I am happy. Yeah, happy is an adjective, man is a noun. So I am a man. That man would be a complement, yeah, but it's a noun forming the complement. So that's a nominal complement. But if I say I am happy, happy is an adjective. That is an adjectival complement. That's just a term. Yeah. So like I said, linking verbs are usually the verbs that we call the verbs that show state of being. I am happy. She's sad. She's happy. She's joyful. She's elated. In our house, we are beautiful. We are handsome. That's a state. Yet the king is extremely rude. That is a state. Oh, the king is a nice person. That is also a state. You get it? So that's just what those are what we call linking verbs. So action verbs, they show actions. Linking, they're just mostly types of be verbs. Yeah. Also, you could also say I feel sick. Yeah. But well, I feel sick is not saying that I performed an action. It is saying that the state in which I am is the state of being sick. Do you understand that? Yeah. So those are linking verbs. And then locative verbs, those ones usually come, the word that comes after them would mostly be an adverb showing a location. Yeah. I put the food on the table. Yeah. I put the food on the table. So the food, I is the subject, the food. So I is the subject, put is the verb, the food is the object. I mean, I put something. But where did I put it? On the table. Yeah, on the table. So the on the table showing the location I put the food. So there are verbs like that when you use them, the word or the phrase that would come after it or that would come after maybe the object would most likely show you the location something has been put. Yeah? Place it in the room or put it in the room. Yeah? Do you see that? So verbs like put, verbs like place, they would mostly show location. And with this, I've talked about verbs. Like I said, it's meant to be a summary. It might be a bit long lesson, like if you, but I'm glad you actually stayed till the end to watch it. But it's a long topic, yeah. But at the same time, it's just a summary of all of these topics. If you want to know verbs so much and in detail, then you need to watch all of these individual topics. Trust me, I've always told my students, if you understand verbs, God, you definitely have understood so much in English because almost every aspect of English grammar, or I mean every language generally, yeah, verbs are extremely important. Thank you for watching this video to the end. I do hope you actually like this video. Please share the video. Please make a comment and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Once again, my name is Joseph Laughter. Bye.